This storm is about to turn impacts up another level, and I genuinely mean that. Listen, we have been tracking the system for a few days now, and every single model run that has come in over the last 12 hours has just continued to trend in a more concerning direction. We are talking about a setup that is going to bring significant flash flooding, a tornado threat that I personally think is being slept on right now, and some gusty winds across a really large area of the south and southeast over the next 36 to 48 hours. And there are a few things I want to walk you through tonight that I do not think are getting enough attention in the broader coverage of this storm. So we are going to go over the upper level pattern. We are going to talk about why this low pressure system could actually begin to strengthen even as it moves further inland. And we are going to really dig into that tornado threat because I think there is more there than the current outlooks are showing. And listen, I do know there's a lot of severe weather ongoing right now further to the north across parts of the Midwest and Ohio Valley. I am not going to cover that in tonight's video because that is a now thing. And there are a lot of great people going live covering it in real time, and you guys should absolutely be tuned into that if you live up there or have family up there. I'm thinking of those folks and praying that the worst case scenarios do not unfold over the coming hours. But with that said, let us get rocking and rolling tonight. My name is Mitch. Good evening. I hope you guys are doing well. Subscribe if you have not yet. Like the video if you enjoy it. And if there is anything you would like me to pray about or pray over for you, please put it in the comments below. Let us get into this. So let me start by setting the scene of what we are dealing with right now, because I think this is really important context before we get into the model data. Right now, this low pressure system is sitting just inland, and when you look at the radar, it honestly does not look very impressive at all. The models were showing 24 to 36 hours ago that this early period was going to be a bit of a dead zone as far as widespread organized thunderstorm activity goes, and that is kind of what we are seeing. We are getting rounds of tropical downpours across portions of the deep south, some shower activity, but nothing that looks particularly fearsome on radar right now. But here is the thing, and this is what I really want you guys to understand tonight. The cone and the current radar presentation are not the whole story here. Not even close. I would actually argue that some of the most significant and dangerous impacts from this whole setup are still ahead of us. The current low-level circulation is sitting over land right now. And the classic situation we see with a weak tropical or hybrid system, like this is what I would call a sloppy east weighted setup. All the convection, all the shower and thunderstorm activity is getting pushed off to the east and southeast of the center of circulation. If you look at it on satellite, you can see there is virtually no convection wrapping around the western side of the system at all. And the reason for that is this system is getting blasted by westerly shear from the west toward the east, and that is just shoving everything off to the right side of the storm. So that western flank is just completely void of any meaningful convection. And that is your classic presentation for a weak tropical system experiencing significant wind shear. It makes sense with exactly what we are seeing on the radar right now. But what is going to change, and this is the crux of what I want to talk about tonight, is what happens over the next 24 to 36 hours as this system tracks further to the east and northeast and begins to interact with a very different upper level pattern than what is currently in place. So let me walk you through the model data here. Let us start with the high resolution model and go through the timing, and then we will look at the European model as well, because I think the Euro does a really nice job of painting the picture of how this is going to evolve. Starting off tonight, say around 8 to 10 in the evening, things are still relatively quiet across a lot of the deep south with just some ongoing shower activity. But as we get into the overnight hours, say 2 to 4 in the morning, you start to see more convection trying to blossom across the Bay Area of Louisiana and into southern Mississippi. So if you live in that area tonight, please be aware that we could have some flash flooding, potential in a low-end tornado threat in the overnight hours. And I want to be honest, I have been going over this data a lot over the last few days, and I have been saying this over and over, so forgive me if I mix up a number here or there. I'm definitely tired tonight, and I appreciate your patience, but this overnight window is something we genuinely need to watch. And then as we get into tomorrow morning around sunrise, things start to really change. You start to see a lot more convection and shower and thunderstorm activity blossoming across Mississippi and Alabama. And the areas near Jackson, Hattiesburg, Meridian, these are areas I think could be dealing with a legitimate flash flooding situation as people are waking up and heading into the morning hours. And this is not just a little rain here and there. We are talking about some of these areas potentially picking up very heavy rainfall in a short period of time, and that is going to create dangerous situations, especially in low-lying areas and anywhere near streams and creeks that are already running a little bit higher than normal from recent rainfall. And then we get into tomorrow afternoon, say around 3 to 5, and this is when things start to get really interesting from a tornado standpoint. There is a huge push of moisture getting well up into Tennessee and the Carolinas, kind of a double whammy. You have got this slug of tropical moisture being pushed northward from the Gulf, and at the same time a cold front sagging down from the north is going to be interacting with all of that moisture. That interaction right along and just ahead of that boundary is where I think we have to watch very closely for tornadoes. And listen, I want to be straight with you. The current SPC outlook for tomorrow has just a 2% tornado risk across a big swath of the Deep South. I personally think this gets bumped up, at minimum to a 5% risk in certain areas. I will tell you why in a minute when we talk about the upper level pattern and the low level jet. But before I get into that, let me also walk through the Euro model, because I think the Euro does a really good job with this particular setup, even if it just shows things as blobs of color compared to the higher resolution data. The Euro is showing this moisture blossoming and really ramping up as we get into tomorrow evening. And then look at what it does with the low pressure by the time we get into the overnight hours tomorrow night and into early Friday morning. It develops a pretty healthy looking low pressure right near the South Carolina and Georgia border. And that number actually goes from a higher pressure value down to a tighter, stronger low. And that is indicating strengthening of the system, not weakening. And I think that is something a lot of people are not expecting, because they see the system that looks sloppy and disorganized on radar right now, and they assume it is just going to continue to fall apart. But the upper level pattern has something else in mind. So let me explain why I think the system could actually get stronger as it moves further inland, because I know that sounds counterintuitive. Normally you expect a tropical or hybrid system to weaken over land, but look at the upper level pattern at around 250 millibars, way up there around 35,000 to 40,000 feet. What you see is a lot of air in the upper levels being dispersed out away from the storm system on the eastern and southeastern side of it. When you have that kind of upper level divergence out ahead of a low pressure system, that is actually supportive of development, because it allows air to rise and replace that air being pushed away. More air rises, you get more convection, you get more shower and thunderstorm activity, and hybrid systems love that moist rising environment. Now, behind the system and to the west, you have a very different story where strong upper level flow is working against the system, blasting dry air into the western side of the circulation. And that is exactly why the radar looks the way it does right now with all the convection pushed to the east. So you kind of have two very different environments on each side of this storm. And as the system moves to the northeast over the next 24 to 36 hours, it is going to move into a position where it can take better advantage of that favorable upper level divergence pattern out ahead of it. And the Euro is showing this with the low pressure strengthening as it gets into the Carolinas. It will lose its tropical characteristics, absolutely. This is going to become some sort of hybrid storm, essentially just a strong low pressure system. But strong low pressure systems can still produce serious weather and serious impacts. And I think that is the key takeaway here. This thing is not done, not even close. Now let me talk about the tornado threat in a little more detail, because this is the thing I really feel is being underestimated right now, and I want to make sure you guys are prepared for it. The main driver of the tornado threat with a setup like this is the low-level jet. And right now, already tonight, if you look at the low-level winds at around 850 millibars, you can see that low-level jet is already raging across portions of Mississippi and Louisiana. We are talking winds pushing well over 40 knots at that level of the atmosphere, which translates to wind speeds of 45 to 50 miles per hour, up around 4,000 to 6,000 feet above the ground. And what that does is it creates a significant amount of directional wind shear in the lower levels of the atmosphere. You have got surface winds coming from one direction, and then these much stronger winds a few thousand feet up coming from a completely different direction. And the turning in that shear is exactly what can support tornado development, even with a sloppy, disorganized tropical setup. These are not going to be your classic supercell tornadoes. These are going to be what I would describe as sloppy, weaker tornadoes that can spin up quickly along boundaries and along rain bands. They are not easy to see coming on radar. They do not always look impressive, and that is actually what makes them more dangerous in some ways, because they can happen without a lot of warning. And then as we get into tomorrow afternoon and evening, that low-level jet is going to be moving more so over Alabama, and then into the Carolinas and Georgia. And there is actually a corridor that I want to highlight specifically across the upstate of South Carolina and into portions of western North Carolina. There is a place in that area that some of us call the mini tornado alley of the Carolinas, and it has something to do with a spike in elevation in that region that can help focus and enhance the low-level shear. It is not perfectly understood, but we have seen it produce tornadoes before, and I want to make sure people in that area are on alert tomorrow afternoon and evening. Now let me get into the rainfall side of this, because flooding is also a very serious concern, and in some ways it might actually be the biggest impact story out of this entire event when all is said and done. The blend of model data right now between now and Saturday evening is showing some really concerning numbers across the Deep South. There is a pocket of pink and white in the rainfall forecast that represents 4 to potentially 8 inches of rain across portions of southern Mississippi and southern Alabama. Now that is an enormous amount of water, and when you consider that the ground is already somewhat saturated from recent rainfall events across this region, that is a recipe for serious flash flooding. And I want to be honest, these rainfall forecasts with a hybrid tropical system are notoriously difficult to pin down precisely. I know we got 1.5 inches of rain here in my own area just from some scattered downpours this morning that honestly was not forecast very well at all. That is just the nature of this kind of setup. You can have one spot pick up 2 inches, and then 10 miles up the road, they barely get 1/4 inch. So even if the models are showing your area getting a lower total, do not let your guard down, because one of these training bands can set up over you and drop a serious amount of water in a very short period of time. The Weather Prediction Center right now has a 40% risk of flash flooding across a red area covering parts of southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama between now and tomorrow night. And they have extended a 15% slight risk all the way into the Midlands of South Carolina. And listen, I know 15% does not sound like a scary number, but within 25 miles of any given location in that zone, that is a genuinely meaningful flash flooding risk and should not be taken lightly. And then we also have to watch Friday, because even after this main system moves out, the cold front that has been sagging down from the north is going to be draped across a very wet and saturated atmosphere, and any thunderstorms that fire off that front Friday morning and into Friday afternoon are going to have access to a very tropical and moisture-laden air mass, and could produce some locally heavy rainfall right on top of ground that honestly already cannot hold much more water. Insult to injury is really the only way to describe it. We are just adding more water to an already full bucket. In terms of the wind threat, I think we are going to see 30 to maybe 50 mile per hour gusts with some of the stronger cells tomorrow across the Deep South and into the Carolinas. Not widespread hurricane force winds, but gusty enough to down tree limbs and knock out power in localized areas. And as that enhanced belt of upper level flow comes diving down from the north, there will be some pockets of stronger wind gusts and storms across Georgia and the Carolinas too. Overall, I just want to reiterate that this storm system is not done, and in some ways, the most significant impacts are still ahead. The tornado threat is real, and I think it is being undersold in the current outlooks. The flooding threat is very serious across southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and extending into South Carolina. And the system could actually strengthen as it gets into the Carolinas on Friday, which is something I really do not think many people are expecting right now. Tomorrow is going to be an active day across the Deep South, and I want you guys to be ready for it. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive warnings. Make sure you know the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. And if a tornado warning is issued for your area tomorrow, please take it seriously, even if it is associated with this sloppy-looking tropical setup, because these spin-up tornadoes can be brief, but they can still cause significant damage. I'm going to continue to keep you updated as things evolve overnight and into tomorrow morning. I will be honest with you, I am pretty tired tonight. I have been putting out a lot of information over the last few days on this system, and it takes a lot of energy, and honestly, I did not do myself any favors today. I appreciate your patience. If anything was not as crisp as it normally is in this video, you guys are genuinely the best community out there, and I do not take that for granted. I am praying for everybody dealing with the nasty weather tonight, both here in the south and further north, where there is still a lot of very active, severe weather ongoing. Stay safe. Please take care of your neighbors and check on your people, and God bless. We will talk to you again tomorrow.